Welcome back. The South African Union of Students has appealed to students to apply for NSFAS funding as soon as possible and not wait for the matric results before applying. NSFAS closing date for 2024 applications is the 31st of January. The embattled National Student Aid Financial Scheme is still attempting to finalize the payments of outstanding 2023 allowances for 20,000 students. Well, it says it will complete the direct payment to students from various higher learning institutions by the 15th of January. And joining us now for more on this is NSFAS Senior Manager, Corporate Communications, Ishmael Mnisi. Mr. Mnisi, very good morning. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Sam, it's my pleasure to be here, and good morning to the viewers.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. First of all, before you get deeper into the discussion, just take us through the progress with regards to the payment of the outstanding allowances to 2023 or to the students for last year.
Well, Sam, around December, we were standing at around 235,000 students, which we were supposed to conclude their payments. And the rest have been paid. We are now left with about 20,000 students. So we've registered significant progress. However, we are, of course, not content with the 20,000 that is still left.
Yes.
However, we could not conclude that before we speak to our institutions, because the data that we have and the one that has been submitted by some of the institutions doesn't correlate. Now, that's why we want our institutions to reopen. We sit down with them, we look at that data, clean it up, and where payment is due, we will then disperse before the 15th of January this year.
I mean, we are now in year 2024, which is a new year. Why pay after the fact? Why pay, allowances for 2023 in the next financial year?
Two challenges in the main. Firstly is the issue of data exchange between ourselves and our institution, something that we are working to clarify and manage in 2024. But secondly is the issues of the changes that also takes place when a student changes their academic course. Yes. During the year. It affects the allowance type that they are qualifying for. When they change their accommodation, it also affects that process. So we are talking to our institutions that we need to agree on a cutoff date for any change that must be made in the student profile to make sure that we don't have these delays going forward. Now, we are determined, as we have said, that for these outstanding ones, we clear them. And as we start the 2024 academic year, we make sure that we stick to the deadlines and working together with our SRCs, students themselves, and the institutions, both our TVET colleges and our universities, to make sure that we don't cross over the deadlines. Yes. And there's seamless communication between ourselves to make sure that these kind of inconveniences to students are a thing of the past.
Right, right. So why is it important for students to start applying for funding now?
Well, we have started the application process last year in November. We are closing on the 31st of January, and that's why we've made a call that we would request that the first-time entry university students and TVET colleges, they must apply before the close off date on the 31st of January. Yeah. And the reason is simple. We want to give them a real-time responses, particularly SASA recipients. When they apply, instantly they get feedback because we have that data in the system and we can qualify them. And for those who are not SASA recipients, we also engage with them as soon as their information is with us, and if there are additional documents that they must submit, we'll request them to do so. We are working very well with SARS, with the Department of Home Affairs, and the Department of Social Development, which is responsible for SASA, to make sure that we qualify our students expeditiously.
So what's the qualification criteria, that is?
Two qualification criteria. One, academic eligibility. A student must have performed well academically for them to be funded by NSFAS. Secondly, the joint income of the parents must be about 350,000 per annum for both the parents. And then if they qualify with those two criteria, instantly we confirm them as recipients. And for those who feel aggrieved by the process itself, they have the opportunity to also appeal the decision that they would have received from NSFAS. And also with the appeals, Our commitment is to make sure that we deal with these appeals very fast, to make sure that there are no further inconveniences in the process that will ultimately lead to late disbursements of allowances.
Okay. What then happens when a student applies but does not pass matric? I mean, how do you sift through this?
Well, if they don't pass, certainly we are not going to receive the documentation that we require, and would then regard that student as having not complied with the requirements, and of course that application will fall off.
Okay. So what is NSFAS doing to ensure that only the qualifying students, are attended to?
Well, working together with our institutions, the data that they send to us and the data that would be having in the system helps us greatly to make sure that we pay the right allowance to the right student. And that's why any changes in the system causes a bit of instability if it's not managed correctly. But we are working with our institutions to clean up this this data, and making sure that it arrives on time to NSFAS, gets processed, and through our service providers, we are able to pay the allowances to students on time.
Ishmael, there's been issues in the past, with regards to NSFAS cards not loading, or some students using funds fraudulently. Then there's also been issues of, IT challenges, which lead to slow payments or slow processing of applications, and fraudulently or erroneously paying, students monies that they're not supposed to receive. So how do you plan to curb this?
Well, when we moved towards the direct payment solution, we have asked our students to KYC, that they must actually register for in the new system so that they can get their banking cards. We have seen an uptake, a slow uptake at the beginning by some of the students, but later during the year, we have seen an uptake which almost closer to 98% of all universities now have KYC'd. And for those that have not, this is where the challenge is. If you have not, registered, we unfortunately won't be able to pay that allowance because we don't know you. And that we are doing because we are trying to deal with fraudulent applicants, bogus students who are not existing, but they have been in the databases of institutions, or some of them might have even left the institutions for that matter. So we are, trying to improve the system on that score. In relation to the ICTs, we are really improving our ICTs so much that we even are able to pick up even some of these students that we are talking about, this 20,000, that there is some information which doesn't tally. This is the might of the IT system that already we have introduced. The only limitation is us having to integrate it with all our institutions to make sure that we have a seamless process of sending information from NSFAS to the institutions and from institutions to NSFAS.
I see the NSFAS board met over the past weekend to discuss some of the outstanding issues. What came out of that meeting, and was the issue of the CEO discussed? Do we have a CEO yet?
Yes, of course. We do have an acting CEO currently, Mr. Ramuresi, who is doing quite a sterling job at NSFAS currently. We are implementing the Werksman attorney's report recommendations, which amongst others dealt with the issue of the former CEO, and also there are currently disciplinary hearings that are taking place for other internal staff members who have been flagged in the report. And finally, also the issue of the payment service providers. Also, the board will make a pronouncement about them. We know that the recommendation was that their services must be terminated. Very soon, we will make a pronouncement on how far are we with that process. But our commitment is to make sure that even when we implement that any of these recommendations, we do not, delay the payments to students or even the operations of NSFAS in any way throughout the process.
You just spoke about the fact that NSFAS will make a pronouncement on the Werksman's report in relation to the direct payments of service providers. So will that report, or will that announcement come before the payment of the outstanding allowances?
Of course, the current outstanding payments are paid through the current direct payment service providers.
Yeah.
But going forward, our intention is to relook at the entire process, including the very same direct payment service, the current direct payment service providers. But what we want to emphasize as NSFAS is that the direct payment solution to students is a principle that we intend to keep, because we want to engage with our students directly and resolve the problems that they have. And because this system assists NSFAS also to deal with issues of fraud that has been committed before. We have seen instances where students who are undeserving to receive the bursary were receiving it before. And in such instances, NSFAS will embark on a process to recoup that money from those individuals. And in some instances, we are recouping that money, which is unused by our institutions, both universities and TVET colleges, working together with the Hawks. We have made significant progress in as far as that is concerned.
Just how confident are you that you will meet the January 15th deadline?
We are working around the clock to make sure that we resolve all these 20,000 cases, and we are hopeful that come the 15th of January, we'll give a report on progress that would have made at the time.
So you're categorically confirming that by the 15th of January, everything would have been sorted. Should I quote you on this?
Well, being sorted is in two ways. Those that deserves to be paid would have been paid, and if there are still cases where we are picking up some of the challenges, we'll communicate as well. We must not make an assumption that the entire 20,000 deserves at the moment, because we don't know. We are interrogating that data. But should it happen that all of them qualifies in terms of our criteria, they will all shall receive their allowances.
I'm getting a sense that you are not 100% confident that by the 15th of January, everybody would have been paid. And I know that because of the ongoing systems glitches, some students have complained that their ID numbers not being recognized by the NSFAS application portal and all other issues. So is there a plan B to accommodate those who've been left out as a result of the NSFAS technical glitches?
We are not talking of technical glitches, SM. When I'm saying we would have resolved all the 20,000, I'm trying to avoid the word they would have been paid. Remember, we pay to those that qualifies, and that must be clear. We are saying that all these 20,000 cases would be resolved. Those that must be paid would have been paid, and where there are issues regarding to the very same data that we're interrogating, we will still engage with those students. So I think that's the clarity that we must provide.
Okay.
Our commitment is that come the 15th, we would have cleared all this data and would have paid those that are deserving, and those that are still having problems would have contacted them, including their institutions, to resolve those issues.
Okay. Ishmael Mnisi, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for the update.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. That was NSFAS Senior Manager Corporate Communications, Ishmael Mnisi, encouraging students to apply for NSFAS funding as soon as possible and not wait for the matric results before applying.